Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We're coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're taking what we learn about ancient truths in the person of Jesus into our everyday life. You can check out whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermon and resources we're using for our conversation. Thanks for joining us today for Season 4. This section of Mark, again, is the King's Narrow Path, and we're following Jesus and his disciples as they turn south from the region of Galilee toward Jerusalem. Hi.
Hi.
How's everybody doing?
Okay.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, so when this airs, it's going to be way past Halloween, but today is Halloween. So I thought we could talk about Halloween.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Are we allowed to?
What do you mean? Well,
This is like a Christian podcast.
right. I know. That's partly why I want to bring it up.
I was second
No
guessing
judgment.
wearing my sweatshirt with dog ghost on it because I was like, should I? And I
Just to
didn't.
get a rouse out of me.
There was like 4 dogs
I'm
and
going
they're
to wear
dressed
this
as
to trigger
ghosts.
Steven.
And that's my Halloween. Never mind.
Dax did ask me this morning what I was dressing as because he had to dress up. He's like, well, what are you dressing as? And I was like,
Have
Nothing,
we
'cause
ever
I'm
talked
a
about
Christian.
favorite costumes ever? Have we ever talked about that?
I mean,
Do we have a favorite Halloween costume we ever wore? Did we ever talk about that
I
before?
have a trauma story. I think
Oh,
I've shared
great.
it.
I think we've.
Go
I think,
ahead.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do
Yeah.
that first.
What is
I
it?
mean, it's short. My mom dressed me up as Aladdin, and she dressed my sister up as Jasmine.
Did you
And I
carry the
remember,
rug?
I must have
or-
been like 8 years old or something. I remember being like, Mom, like,
No
I'm 8.
good.
This feels weird. It doesn't
up,
feel weird to
Mom?
you? Like,
yeah.
What's going on?
yeah.
At least make you the genie.
They were dating in
Yeah.
the movie, Mom.
Yeah.
Did you watch Aladdin? Like,
Did
I
she
think
make
they
you
got
carry a
married.
rug around?
No,
What
but
a question.
So I had this little monkey. I still have it. It sits on my mom's bed to this day. Simba.
No, Abu.
Abu?
Simba's the
Yeah,
lion
Simba's
from Lion King.
Who cares?
Wow, we're hitting Halloween and Disney on the podcast today.
It's all just.
Anyway, it was a little, it had a long tail. It was a
Simba.
little Aladdin monkey.
Yeah,
And I think that's why she made my costume.
because you had that before.
And
Oh,
it
cute.
just felt natural to
Have
have
your
my
sister
sister
do-
be.
Yeah.
But that's not natural.
Did your sister
Not
care?
natural.
Or she did? She
I
was
don't-
just like,
we
She just
actually-
probably wanted to
we
be the
actually haven't
princess.
talked about it, yeah.
like we haven't.
We should have
talked
her
about
on
it.
next week.
Yes.
Oh, call her.
Zoom her in. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about being Jasmine?
What did that do to you back then?
Dax goes to a public charter school. The thing that's interesting is they don't do Halloween costumes, but they send us a note home that's like last year they were learning about the solar system. So I had to make him a costume of Earth.
Oh.
But he didn't want to be Earth for quote real Halloween. So then this year they're like, "Oh, we're doing community helpers." And I'm like, "Well, okay, what do you want to be? And he's like, "A police officer." I'm like, because they have to do like an oral report on it and stuff like that. It's like cute. So I'm like, so then that's what you're going to be for Halloween. That's it. No. And so it's like, why are you doing this to parents?
Yeah.
Like either let them do the costumes
Or
or
don't.
don't. Because you're doing this like fake holiday.
Yeah, that's no good.
It's so weird. And
Or
I remember
they
his
allow
preschool used to do that too. Like we don't do Halloween here, but you can dress as one of the animals that would have been on the ark. And Dax like, dinosaur. And I'm like, fine. I'm not fighting this.
They
Sure.
probably fell overboard.
Because you don't know.
They were
They
probably-
didn't fit.
There's just so much weirdness with it.
Yep.
I don't know. It's like do it or don't.
Or they allow Halloween, but they won't allow Christmas.
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
Like there's a lot of schools that aren't allowing. It's almost like,
Yeah, that's true.
or they call it something different. They won't call it Christmas party. They'll call it whatever.
Yeah.
So true confession, I hate Halloween.
Dump it.
I just hate it so much.
Like hate?
And-
Because hate's a strong word. Like,
No, yeah, this is we're gonna get biblical. On
okay.
Oh,
all right,
great.
okay.
Okay.
Here. No,
None of these
I just don't like it.
Christianity.
I just
That's
and
fine,
part
yeah.
of it is probably as a kid, like we didn't do trick or treating,
Yeah.
like we weren't allowed to dress up and do all that
Yeah.
stuff, and like, so I was like, all the people come to our house, we pass out the candy
You
and
do.
all that stuff.
Okay.
Well, now we
Now-
don't. So now we live so far
you're-
off the road in
yeah.
like the country.
That's the so
Nobody
reason.
comes.
No one's
We need a
coming.
long driveway. Eddie.
It's like, turn all the lights off. And just, but yeah, I just don't. I've never gotten into it. I can't get into it. So the kids they took costumes to school, and they're doing like a Halloween parade and like
yeah.
all this. And I'm like, it's getting bigger. It's like it's growing. And I'm like, I'm not on board.
Not
I
doing
just
it.
can't get on board.
It's a weird one.
It is.
Sticking
It's
to
a
my
tough
guns.
space because it's fun. It's silly, and as a Christian, you don't want. Where's the line, right? Like we get. I get
that is
tricked
the
out.
$1 million
That's the $1 million
question.
question.
we celebrate All Hallows Eve.
So for me,
Right.
like
Reformation Day. That's what
Reformation
we-
Day, yeah.
That's what
it's
we're
a
doing.
whole bit today. Like
Every
Like,
morning
friends
I
come
wake up, I
over.
get a nail and I bang it on my
Yeah.
on my door. Anyway, keep going.
Like we
sorry.
have like people come over, we're making
only
food.
dress like Martin Luther. That's all
We
you
get
can do.
all into it for passing out the candy. I love it. I love watching those kids. I love passing it out. Like there's a menu. Like it's a whole
You have a menu?
like we talk about it like weeks out. We figure out what we're gonna make. Everyone brings like food.
Oh, for a meal, not for
yeah,
the kids.
no,
oh,
no,
gotcha.
not for the kids.
I thought you meant like a
and
candy
then
menu.
the candy and like the whole. I will decorate next year because it lands on a Friday. But I won't decorate my house during the week because it's over so fast, right? So that's a lot of work for nothing. But like we have a fire and like
So you have like a party.
See, that's
Yeah.
fun. That's fun.
yep,
Just
and I'm
gathering
gonna
people,
wear
yeah.
my wings,
Your
my
what?
light up wings from Employee Olympics.
Oh, okay.
So those are coming out.
Okay.
So yeah, it's I don't have any trauma though.
Our compromise was
No, I
that
do.
it couldn't be scary.
Yeah.
That was our compromise.
Do you trick or treat? Do you go somewhere like the kids?
We do, yeah. Yeah.
Do you go into McKean?
No, our life group.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go around with them. We have the last couple of years. So, yeah, sponsored by Grace and Grace Church Bags as well.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I was ambushed
The
once and
Elliott
someone took my
pumpkins.
candy bag and I chased them down and got it back.
When you-
But
oh,
I was like
wow.
13, living in Ohio.
It is a weird holiday, though.
It is.
It is. But
Yeah.
I mean, you could say
But no
that
trauma.
You say for all of them.
You could, because Christmas was a Christian response to a pagan holiday. Easter is a response to a pagan holiday.
We just haven't won the Halloween one with Reformation.
Well, trunk or treat is not as like.
So here's my thing with trunk or treat.
You didn't really wrap it into a Jesus thing, like.
Jesus Ween.
Reformation
Wait, who
Day
was in
isn't
the
like
Jesus Ween
as
conversation?
exciting as Jesus' birth. So
Yeah.
Trunk
Oh,
or
that was
treat.
last night. We said we were going to start an event called Jesus Ween.
Jesus Ween, guys.
And it's Jesus
I don't-
Weens.
I don't think
2025.
that's gonna take
It's going
on.
to take off.
No, I don't
It's
think
better
so.
than
You just
Reformation.
watch.
The thing with trunk or treat that gets me is like, I don't know. And I'm not, this is not like a high horse thing. I just don't know how to reconcile it. I'm like, do it or don't.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to, there's this place I drive by and their trunk or treat is tonight from 6 to 8. Those are the exact hours of Halloween.
Yep.
So like, you're just bringing all your church kids to your parking lot.
Yes.
Right.
And
Letting
you're
them dress
dressing up. You're doing the candy stuff.
I know.
but
Just
you're-
call it. Yeah.
Just
At least get out in your neighborhood and have a conversation with the
and that's-
person.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
or maybe you're inviting people to the trunk or treat. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but like,
You're preaching right now.
I just don't like it. I don't like that. Like, either
Yeah.
do it or don't.
Yeah,
I
there's a
don't know.
segregation reality. Like it's them versus us type
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do a Christian version of it.
Why? Right.
But we're not gonna talk to
we
anybody.
don't celebrate Halloween, but we
Yeah, it's
eat
weird.
Just
candy
stay at
and
home
dress
and
up.
cry like
That's-
Andrew.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm
But
doing.
that's all-
yeah.
If anybody
Yeah.
wants to join me, you're welcome to it. We're gonna
No, I
sit in the
loved your
dark and
idea.
cry.
You guys are gonna hang
See, we-
out, do like a family thing, right?
Andrew's tears are
Yeah,
more
so we-
righteous. That's
so-
what I
Do
heard.
you make
yeah.
a special do you make a special meal? Like is there like
No, but we're gonna do.
Do you dress in black and commiserate?
We all dress like vampires.
We light some candles. It's gonna be fun at the Silver House tonight. Just gonna say.
Still be a grump.
No, actually, what we're doing. So the
Don't be grumpy.
Despicable Me 4 comes out tonight.
You know the same movie?
No, it's
It comes
like
out
it's
like the
streaming.
stream.
Oh, it's
yeah.
streamed.
Oh.
So we were like, the kids wanted to see it, so we're gonna sit at home and Andy and I were like,
They're gonna dress up like
Yeah.
Despicable
they're
Me.
gonna get like it's a great opportunity to do that.
Are you gonna let them wear their Halloween costumes in the house?
They can do whatever they want. I really don't care that much.
I hope there's a
they
Halloween
dress
scene
up
in the
anyway.
movie.
Sounds like a compromise to me. Sounds like a compromise.
My faith is really weakening.
There's
No,
there's
that's
a
a great
Casting
idea.
Crowns song out there about a slow fade
Oh,
from
it's
the
a
90s.
slow fade
Yeah,
when
you
you
should
give
listen
your
to
life
that.
away. Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't that the song that I brought to the table when we did the 90s music? Because I did.
It might have
Actually,
been.
I'm going to ask the people that listen to this, if you want us to do a 90s Christian podcast,
Oh, we totally could. Oh
Yeah.
my
Why are we
gosh.
asking? Let's just do it. Let's commit
Oh,
right
man.
now.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm
I
ready.
feel like I have
blacked
so
out.
much trauma from the 90s.
Oh, we could fill years of a yeah.
I had a great church experience as well, but
Me too.
Oh, yeah.
For me, my experience,
was
U.S. church model peaked in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Like,
The model that yeah.
just amazing.
It was like a perfect storm of like
It was a
culture
perfect storm. That is.
and yeah. And of course, retrospectively, not so good.
Yeah.
But there were
I'm
good
just
and
glad
bad.
there
There was
wasn't
good
cell
and bad.
phones. That's all.
Oh my gosh.
I ruined a lot of stuff. I'm just saying. I ruined
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
I had a rule in church and youth ministry that if you didn't have a rule in your church because of your youth ministry, it wasn't successful youth ministry.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's good.
Like you're
That's a
not,
good one.
You're not actually succeeding until your church creates a rule.
Yeah, until like the elder board has to be like, we don't allow glue sticks in the whatever.
There's like a story of some kid like on youth, not for our church, but on youth ministry night, there will be nobody climbing in the organ pipes. I'm like,
Because it happens.
someone had to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody's got a great story.
Yeah, I know
coming
that
out
one
of
kid,
Yeah.
man. That one kid. He's a lead
That
pastor
one kid,
somewhere.
and he still talks about it to this day.
He's a missionary.
He's gotten a lot of
Probably.
sermon miles out of that one.
We had one of those about a roof, like climbing, because we had a way to get like from the drain pipe to the roof of the church, and then it was like, oh yeah, that was dangerous, but it was fun while it
Sardines.
lasted.
Do you guys play sardines?
Oh yeah,
Right, yeah.
Oh,
No,
wow.
I don't know what that is.
That was
No.
the one where you all somebody hid and then you went and found
Such
like
in the dark. It's such a
Yeah.
bad idea.
We
It's
did lock-ins.
awful.
Like,
That's kind
hey,
of the
you
same thing.
hormonal teenagers, like, let's all hide in the dark.
Let's
And
turn
when you
off the
find a
lights.
person, squeeze in that small space with them until there's like 30 people in that space.
really bad news.
And if you're the last person and you lose.
We did lock-ins, but not
just like-
The
sardines.
last person loses it.
Oh, boy. Anyway.
youth ministry.
Anyway, what are we talking
Speaking
about
of
today?
youth
What are
ministry,
we talking
Speaking
about?
of authority.
yeah, we're talking about authority. So we're in Mark
this-
11. We're talking about Jesus' authority being challenged. So this is right after the temple. He cleanses the temple. Pastor Scott was preaching, and his big idea is that your response to authority reveals what's deep in your heart. So first,
Yep.
so your natural, what is your, if you want to be honest, you don't have to answer, what's your natural reaction to authority?
I'll
What's
go
your,
first.
okay.
Oh.
And there's hers.
Would anybody like to share?
I'm an.
I don't think she
rare
even
form
finished
this
her
week.
sentence.
No, it's, you've already answered. You've already answered, Sarah. Go ahead.
Okay, authority for me, I have extremely high respect right off the bat. Like, you've worked really hard. You're in that position for a reason. You were trusted to be in that situation. You were in that position because you were trusted. You're good. Like, you're skilled. You had to do a lot of work to get where you are. And I have high respect for that because you're either protecting me or you're protecting someone I love. Like, there's something positive, hopefully, that's coming out of your position of authority, correct? Go.
I was going to ask, is that whether or not you know the person? Is that just a global
That's
statement?
a global
on all,
statement.
Okay,
Like,
great. Okay.
You took an oath in a sense when you take leadership roles. You are taking ownership of everything under you, okay? And you have a responsibility to that. I 100% will follow you. I will respect you. I respect your authority and position until I feel that you are taking, what's the word I want to use?
Advantage of it?
Thank you. You're taking advantage of your leadership. You're taking advantage of your position. You're manipulating. You are basically, you're only out for yourself in that role, and you're not taking responsibility for everything that's underneath you and the responsibility that comes with it. After that, I will continue to do what is right, but I don't respect you after that until things turn around. And I'm usually not, if it's direct towards me, then I will take responsibility for that to take care of myself. But I'm never saying the door is shut on that, but that will send me into a different space with you as a leader and as an authority figure. Yeah. So I don't know what that says about my heart.
But you're it's like a one strike and you're out kind of a situation.
No. So
So it's just observation over a
I
little bit of
see, I
time.
see a pattern of abuse.
Here
Yeah.
we go.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
I'm like very, very aware. And then I'm in this, and it isn't necessarily towards me. It's just if it's happening to me or not happening to me, you can be in leadership or authority and have nothing to do with me. But I watch you, whether you're a public figure or whatever, like my tone for you will change. I'll be more protective of myself
Sure.
in regards to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I found myself answering for my wife just because she's
Okay. Also
She's not
interesting.
here, but,
yeah. Well, at least change your voice. I'm just kidding.
I'm not going to try that. I mean, because she says it often. She is great with authority unless the authority then mandates something that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
If there's, you're like, what? Like, so anyway, so then at that point she's like, she'll buck against the authority. For me, I probably similar to you. I'm gonna trust you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna trust the position that you've been put in out of the gate. I've been known to trust too quickly. Those have been some of my downfall. I don't know how to reconcile that, though. If you've given me no reason not to trust you, I want to at least have the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Even though your heart is deceitfully wicked above all, you know.
Amen.
I missed it in the last episode, guys. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I want to trust out of the gate. But I'm similar to you, probably worse than you. Once that jeopardized, I have a really hard time coming back.
Yeah.
I really, really do. Without some really tough conversations.
Yeah.
And I want to live by that approach as well, that tough conversations need to happen. I think that eliminates the potential for those, crossing bridges that you can't come back from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway,
That's good.
No, I think that's good. I resonate, I think, with both of you. I think very similarly. If authority is there, I tend to trust pretty easily. But I do find that as soon as that authority uses its power to, I would say, hurt people in lower positions, or take advantage of people in lower positions, that is a hard thing to come back from. And then there's part of me that just says, that's just abuse of power, and that's not an authority that I want to be under. So, yeah, I think
You got it.
well said.
That's good. So in this story, the leaders are they're not asking Jesus why he cleansed the temple. They're asking him by what authority he did that. And what are you guys' observations on that? What does that say about kind of the state of what's going on?
Let me say it again. I like what's
So
listening.
they didn't ask Jesus why he cleansed the temple. They asked him by what authority he would do that. Why is that a question? What's going on? Let's just talk about kind of the state of things.
I mean, it peeks into probably the political bureaucracy that's happening in the first century. And if he didn't have the authority, it could have, consequences, ramifications for him, because what he's doing is pretty, it's punishable.
Right.
So it feels like a natural, as a leader, a corrupt leader, it would feel natural that would be how they would ask that question, rather than what are you doing? Why are you doing it?
Right.
They don't care about why.
Yeah. Well, and they probably know why.
Right. Well, and there's probably underlying,
Yeah.
this is a corrupt environment.
And they're deflecting from themselves. They don't want,
Yeah.
they're justifying their own actions.
But I think they see it as an opportunity 3 years in. Oh, there you go. Jesus is, we're just waiting for one wrong step. One wrong step.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if, if you've got something out against somebody, or somebody's got something out against you, they're going to stack that deck, man. The more that they can put in their corner to use it against you.
Yeah.
That's real.
Well, I think it goes back to the fact that these leaders, to me anyway, it says that they knew what was going on was corrupt. They were already taking advantage of the system. So that's all they were looking for, right? Stephen, was that opportunity to say, gotcha. And in that, I think it reveals, again, sort of that authority that I would not want to be under.
Yep.
And I think sometimes when you're in that position, it's funny how closely they hold on to their authority. Oh, yeah. It's funny how insecure they are in terms of that one thing that I think makes me the guy, the group of, it could be all gone like that if it's the right person that comes along and says and questions the authority. Yeah. So it reveals to me a lot of insecurities in there, which again, if you're drawing authority from a bad, it's not from the Lord. Yeah. I think it just reveals a lot about the Pharisees and religious leaders. Yeah,
I think that's helpful too. Stacking the deck has always been a good lens for me to measure my own heart by. So if I feel like good. I'm just, there they go, they did it again. There they go. Seasons of marriage, you know, you're frustrated at your wife. You're like, you do this 1,000 times. Well, why are we stacking the deck here? Aren't we on the same team? Our work colleagues or neighbors or there they go doing it again. What are we doing? What's wrong with us that we feel the need to stack the deck? Is there truly a conversation that we should have had 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, and because we chose to not act in a certain way, the posture of our heart is now in sin. And I think that's what we're seeing with these religious leaders. Obviously, they've got, many, many years of, poor decisions and a heart that's been hardening over time.
That's great.
It makes me think of just recent history, even just the churches and leaders who have fallen, to sin or whatever over time, and how I just liken it to. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but that idea of you're like building this power. It's kind of on a house of cards. If one of those cards gets questioned, pulled, whatever, the whole thing can come crumbling down. And not everyone has this story, but oftentimes I think when you hear about the aftermath, it's like about money and influence and power. And, I think this is just a long time ago example of that. Yeah. Okay, so Pastor Scott had this really cool section about parables, and he has this quote: "Parables start out as a picture that become a mirror and then eventually turns into a window." I want to spend time talking about this because we're going to start not only in this section, but the next section of Mark when we come back. It's going to be very like this. A lot of like parables, a lot of like teaching, hearing Jesus kind of close out his ministry, really. And so I just wanted to spend some time talking about parables and just in general, like thoughts on that method, his teaching, and even this, just like it starts as a picture, becomes a mirror, eventually turns into a window.
It's like an interrogation room.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it not though?
Yes.
One of those like
two-way mirror.
Yeah, two-way mirrors.
Yeah, totally.
Those things scare me.
I know. Don't you feel like they're everywhere public? Like sometimes I go into a public restroom and I'm like,
Have you seen those Instagram reels? Yeah, you did with
you
the
put your
finger?
Oh, yeah.
Danielle, that's
all
real.
hotels. All hotels.
Yep.
Oh man.
I'm always looking for a light, an event, or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
the state of the world, man.
It's wild.
I should be more paranoid.
Well, apparently you are, Mr. Halloween.
You look for two-way mirrors on
Well,
Halloween.
they're not dressed up in a
That's fair,
costume,
yeah.
so they're good.
Gosh.
Don't be more paranoid.
That judgment.
Live in bliss.
No, I mean the beauty of parables. I mean, I just think it's such a beautiful way to get a story across. I mean, obviously, story has, from the beginning of time, has been a method. But certainly in the first century, like the richness of, and the intentionality in using parables to get a point across is just, it's just beautiful. So I can definitely relate to that. It's designed to, for you to see yourself, and then hopefully for you to see the world through as well.
Yeah.
I can find them confusing. We've talked about this before. Intimidating in a sense, but I appreciate how well our pastors here break them down and like give context to it, because it helps. Because you imagine, just from a whole like different point of view, I am not at all that close to that clever. That if somebody was like, if I was in a position like he has been in several times, to be able to just like whip it out and have it be, that's just, for me, when I watch him do that or read about it, whatever, like for me, it's like, man, you are just locked and loaded all the time. You're so wise. You're so clever. Like and to be like that would just be.
Can you imagine if sermons were like that?
Oh my gosh.
Just get up for 5 minutes, tell an
Say a
abstract story, sit down.
Should we try it?
Yeah, observe two people in the room,
Yeah.
get up, say something about around them,
Yeah.
and then sit back down.
I mean, we're not Jesus, so we're not supposed to do
No.
that. We're supposed to exposit
Yeah.
what he.
But I mean,
But
can
man,
you imagine?
Have a big heart and then sit down, but then get back up and finish.
But it is neat. There's this shift. You can trace the shift in Jesus' ministry where he talks plainly. You don't necessarily see this in Mark, but if you were to compare all the Gospels together, there early on in his ministry, he's talking in parables, and I'm not going to do this justice. I'm going to have to finish this thought in another podcast, I think. But
more like riddles.
Yeah, there's a moment where Jesus, in it's culminated where Jesus goes, "For those who have ears, let them hear." And there's this moment where he sees the rejection of his people, where the style in which he teaches changes. Again, I'll come back and
that's right.
I started a thought, and I'm like, oh, I'm not actually. This sounds like a parable, guys.
We'll put it in our non-existent show notes.
There was a guy who cut his hair the other day, and his wisdom left. The end. So,
the end.
That's
I
terrible.
like that.
But the point of parables is that for those who have ears, let them hear, and there is that reality that if God is doing something in your heart, there's an intrigue, like he's drawing you in, you're going to seek out that answer. You may even have a supernatural comprehension back to what he's saying. I think we see both responses throughout the Gospels.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I think parables they offer sort of an endless well of perspective, and I love the picture that they paint. And even reading through the parable of the wicked tenants, there's so many different perspectives you can draw from the tenants. You can draw from the servants that are sent, the son, the father, and even drawing from just the context that he puts it in the vineyard. And just to me, it paints a picture in my mind, but it doesn't allow just one response. It doesn't allow just one answer or one lesson. It keeps me going back. And I love the way that Jesus breaks those things down and offers something that's very accessible.
That's good.
But I often think about that just in terms of the gospel message, the scriptures themselves. They're I always like to describe they're very simple, but they're incredibly deep.
Yes.
They're very accessible for people.
Accessible, that's good.
Yeah, but you're never going to find the bottom.
There's a
you
well,
continue to ask and go back and reframe and learn new things. And I think it's
way
why
better than I did. Thanks for mopping that up.
Mopping that up.
That's what we're here for. No, I just think of the living and active Word of God. It's never done impressing me. It's never done revealing something.
As you're talking, I think about Tim Keller. Remember when he did that the older brother take on the prodigal son?
Oh yeah.
Prodigal God it was called.
Prodigal God,
he came out with that book, and it's to your point, because growing up in the 90s, it was all about the prodigal son, prodigal son. And then Tim Keller brought this, really this older brother perspective, and it was like, oh my God, it was so rich.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was just felt like he was just mining this, endless well. You don't mine wells, but you know what I'm saying.
You could.
Anyway, keep going.
It's partly drill.
All right.
This is
Well, and I think the interesting thing too about this particular section is Jesus did use something that maybe the leaders could have. Well, I think they did key in on it. Like, oh, he's talking about us. And like before this and even after this, I think again he's a little bit more cryptic. But for this, what was it, like Isaiah? 5 or something. Anyway,
5:1-7.
Oh yeah, 5:1-7. So yeah, he's harkening back to something that they would have studied and known, and been like, wait a minute, what's he doing here? Yeah, it's just so. It feels so. What's the word? Like tense? There's like tension in the words.
Well, I love in verse 12, it says, then they looked for a way to arrest him because they knew he had spoken the parable against them, but they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him and went away. It's so feeble.
Like,
they're holding on to.
Yeah,
and I love that
it is the house of cards. It is.
It's just, and he delivers this, beautiful parable. And I just see their faces like going either red or completely white, and just all they have is this foundation of fear that they built for themselves, and it's starting to crumble. And I just love that.
In like my head, I just see like his hand. He's like looking at them. He's about to pull. And then he pulls it away. Got you.
Again, it's such a fearful moment. It's a moment of this, like, if you put yourself in that position, I would be terrified. Like, this is so tense. I don't know. And to be able to just be like, well, I can just do this parable, and it's all just, I don't know. I can't imagine just being able to do that. It's wild to me.
It's God's
authority. And I do love it. Comes right after he says, neither will I tell you by what authority I'm doing these things. And then he's like, this is the authority by which I'm doing these things. And like, if you're not getting it yet, which they clearly do at the end of that parable. And it's just like, man.
So wise.
It's like a masterclass.
Right?
Unbelievable.
So savvy. That's good. So let's hit on, there's 3 reflective points in the parable that Pastor Scott points out. Number 1, God is provider. And when you think about that truth, that feels like an obvious truth, but also I think Scott talks a little bit about just how it's sometimes not obvious. So thoughts on that? Like, how much do you feel like you put that stuff on yourself versus God?
Sarah.
Me this week.
Want to do a percentage? You want to do an over under? Yeah.
Isn't this where he makes the point about when I start trying to do it all on my own is when I start getting super frustrated and
probably,
exhausted and I crack under the pressure. That was me this week. So,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was really trying to focus on him and remember like why, like I was doing all this that I was doing. But I wonder, because I cracked so bad and had like such a bad day, the balance was off. And I think this is tricky too, because we're still human beings, regardless if we're putting it all on God to take care of. We're still humans.
Yeah, of course.
We're still going to respond to a lot of pressure or stress or happiness even. Like, so I'm aware of that too.
Yeah, it's not perfection. That's not possible.
No.
Yeah, I often wonder, is the goal to actually avoid it? Or is the goal to
What's your posture when it's
avoid
happening?
know what to do with it when it's happening?
That's good.
Like how to turn it.
Yeah.
Mine's happening.
Because before, you would unravel maybe for a longer period of time. You wouldn't be able to identify it, but the win is actually to be able to identify it.
Yeah.
And you might not go, you might still unravel, but
Yeah.
then you know what to do with that moment. Like, is that the win? Because we're human, right? There's still that human nature inside of us that we're probably not going to be able to overcome completely this side of eternity. So it's almost as if Jesus is going, here's what you do with it.
Right.
Here's what you do. It's going to happen. Here's what you do with it.
I put it as like closing the gap on hindsight is how I like to look at it.
That's
Like
cool.
we always need hindsight, but like the closer you can get your realization to the moment that it's happening, the more I think you're growing. Even in just that moment, it doesn't even have to mean you've gone from like an 8 to a 10 or something.
Yeah.
But
Closing the gap in hindsight. That feels like a teaching. Six
okay,
week,
just
six
made it
week,
up.
Like
Just
her.
made it up.
6 week teaching. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, just being more. It's like self-awareness, but spiritual. Spiritually driven.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it too. Is it's the self-awareness to know that I'm incapable of doing a lot of stuff on my own. But I also think it's important to recognize the gifts and abilities that God has given you. It's just it's important to put the glory where it belongs for those things.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think like that's that's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard thing to kind of wrestle with and understand how to deal with even that in the moment. Sometimes it's this overwhelming sense of like I'm drowning. Other times it's like, I've been given so much and I feel bad taking, some sort of credit or ability, it's all what we've been given is all from the Lord. What I love is if we can appropriately view those things, it gives him glory and it returns joy to us.
Yes.
And part of that
Nice.
is knowing that I can't do these things on my own, but I've been entrusted with something to use for his glory. And when I get to do that, when I step into that sort of, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in weakness kind of frame of mind, which again, I don't do that perfectly ever. But when I get to do that and I get a glimpse of that, it's like, man, and I get joy back because of that. He's such a good God. And so
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Second point of 3, provision comes, and you're kind of getting toward this. Provision comes with responsibility. This is the section where he talks specifically about.
He just quoted that from Spider-Man. That's not from the
Oh,
Yeah, that's Uncle
Spider-Man,
Ben.
Uncle Ben. There are times when I just want the privileges of being a Christian without the responsibilities of being a Christian.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I was making my eggs when I listened to that, and I was like, it was one of my moments where I was like, shoot, that's real.
Yeah, because if I'm honest with myself, I sometimes feel like some of it I've already earned, which is not even close to reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because he does. He touches on this where he's like, I know a lot. Some of you may be pushing back and being like, no, I worked really hard, and I worked really hard to learn what I learned and work for what I have. And you're right, you did absolutely. But the mindset also needs to be, but who gave you those things?
Yeah.
Who gave you the skills? Who gave you that DNA? Who gave you your calling? Like, recognize it.
Yeah, I think it's important for anybody who's been in ministry for any length of time as well, because there is a real entitlement.
Oh, yeah.
That is built up. And I'm not just talking about those who work in ministry, like occupationally, but those who serve in ministry for a long, high capacity volunteers, or if you've been at church for any length of time, like there's a sense in which you think God owes you something because of all the, crap you had to put up with or whatever. I remember feeling that as a lead pastor, like, God would understand if I just, didn't think about something for a while or responded this way once, or the amount of crap I got to deal with, and it's a real thing. And you hear those stories with pastors that have fallen.
Yeah, absolutely.
This like, God would have understood,
That was Robbie's big thing, right?
Yeah, Robbie Zacharias. At least, I mean, allegedly, allegedly. But we have to guard against that.
Yeah, I was challenged recently to think about things that I own versus things I've been called to steward.
Oh,
and
that's good.
I think that it's, when I really look at it, I own nothing. But what God has given me, he's given me some precious things that he's asked me to steward. And it goes back to sort of the the parable of the talents, and what are you going to do with those things? How are you going to treat them? How are you going to allow them to grow and flourish and bless other people? And I love, and this is going back a couple weeks, I think, but talking about the servant that buries the talent in the ground. He wasn't punished because he went out and did something and it didn't return an investment or he lost money. It was because he didn't do anything with it. And so stewardship, if God's given me things, these gifts that he ultimately owns and placed within me, my stewardship requires me to go out and use them for his glory. And so I come back to that point of just saying, like, I don't own anything. It's all his, but he's like graciously entrusted me with things that I get to use to advance his kingdom. And again, that I get to use as, for the most part, the gifts and abilities he's given me. When I get to use them, it's a joy giving thing.
It's a real space for me too, when I'm in a moment where I realize, like, I have beautiful things and I have things that I think are really great. I have a great home. I live in a great neighborhood, like whatever. And then I get in this place where I'm like, he could take it from me at any moment. Like it could be gone. If he really felt it was necessary, it all could be ripped out from underneath me. And I will get so worked up and scared and be like, what would I ever do? Like, what would happen? Like, how would I handle that? Because you're right. It isn't mine.
Yeah.
It's not mine. And if he wants it gone, he can take it. And there's a big piece of me that respects that very, very much.
Yeah.
And it scares me.
I like the paradigm of ownership and stewardship, because I don't think, you guys can push back on this, but stewardship does not afford you the opportunity for unhealthy control. Right? Yeah. Because stewardship forces you to turn your gaze to the owner, right? Because you always have to be consulting that.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do with this? Yeah, that's good.
But ownership very easily can foster this unhealthy control, power, decision making in isolation, because you believe it belongs to you. So that's really, I think, a really great
good
lens.
Yeah, and I think it's also in that same lens, right? As I take care of something, I'm asked to steward it. As I take care of it, my human nature says, well, you should own a piece of this. Yeah, you should get a little bit of this, and then it creeps in. And I think that's where entitlement kind of flows in. You say, well, I have worked so hard at this. I should own some of this. I should be able to control. I should get some credit. I should get, and it's just, it's taking our eyes off of the owner. It's refocusing our gaze and saying, well, no, I should be. It's just inward focus, selfishness, that can really ruin that view. But again, if I've been given some precious gift by somebody, and they said, Andrew, will you take care of this for me until I return? And if I love that person deeply, I'm going to take the best care of that thing that I can until they return. Like, it's not a question in my mind. It's funny how often, though, and I'm challenged by this all the time, things that God has given me, that it's a gauge in my relationship with him. How am I stewarding that thing? Am I asking for a little bit of ownership? Am I asking for some sort of credit or entitlement? That's really a gauge of how much I love him and adore him and trust him.
Or you like worry, like, am I doing enough? Like,
Yeah,
am I doing
yeah.
a good job?
Yeah.
Is this making you, like, is this
Yes.
pleasing you? Is
this
this what you
yeah,
wanted?
Yeah, that's
like,
good. That's really good. Yep.
Because that's ownership in disguise as well. A lot of times
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it definitely should serve as a caution, for even people listening. It's a good lens by which we can inventory our own life. Like, what in our life right now, if we were to do that work, ownership, stewardship work, would we say, listen, no, we feel like we own this, or we want to own this. Is it our kids? Is it our wife? Is it our spouse? Whatever.
Yeah.
Our job, our occupation. What are the things that we're responding in a way that would say ownership and not stewardship?
Yeah.
that's
I think it's a
good.
great lens to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that maybe you would ask, look around, and if anything that in my eyesight would be gone tomorrow, out of my control, what rises, what feelings rise up in you about those things, or people or whatever.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, third and final point. Again, simple on its own. Actions have consequences. So that was where basically we're saying, okay, you don't take care of the vineyard. Goodbye to all the tenants. I'm just going to give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
That is scary. I mean, when he tied
yeah.
in the Jews and Gentiles, that's essentially what happened. Like, these Gentiles were grafted, and it's probably all God's plan in the big picture of things. But that's kind of what Scott was hinting at.
Yeah.
Like, we're grafted in as Gentiles into God's plan because of the rebellion of this Israel, this nation who wasn't but whatever at that point. So it's a real thing. Like, God's plan is going to accomplish regardless of our response, but our participation in God's plan can sometimes change depending on the posture of our heart.
That's so crazy.
So we were in a class last night with Derek, the handcrafted, and he was talking about Esther, and it's funny how Mordecai basically says, you might be we hold on to the for such a time as this verse.
Yeah.
But basically Mordecai also says, if you're not going to do it, God will find somebody else.
God will do it.
He'll do it. His purposes will be
Yeah.
accomplished. It's whether or not you're going to answer the call to say, yes, I want to participate.
Right.
Yeah.
And have a part in that story, the part that you're, meant to play or called to play. And yeah.
Oh, I wonder. Just wonder. You'll appreciate it, Andrew.
I will appreciate it.
Hopefully.
I love that.
But I wonder, so if the plan was always to graft Gentiles in, right? Because God's plan is to save the world. It's the redemption of the world.
Start the outro music. Just kidding.
I know, I'm wondering with very little time left.
You're good. I'm joking.
Welcome to the Oscars. But would the Jewish nation or the religious leaders, had it all gone well and Jesus died I don't know how Jesus would have died on the cross, but it would have had to happen somehow, right? But would the religious leaders have celebrated the grafting in?
Oh, interesting.
You know what I'm saying? On the backside, if it didn't play out the way that it played out, and the Gentiles were always going to be grafted in the redemption
I wonder.
in God's plan.
Humans are bad,
I don't know.
man.
Do we do that? Do we
Right.
do that? Do we open our church doors to people all the time that don't look like us, that don't
that's a good-
function like us? It's, they should,
Believer.
they should clean themselves up before they
Right.
come to our church, and I don't think we do this here. at
No, but
Grace.
you're
no
okay.
church
Yeah.
is perfect.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think that's the point. Is in the modern church, and again, we talk about the 90s. I mean, some of the stuff that was going on in some of the conferences and conventions.
Yeah.
It's just they weren't dealing with people, I think, the way Jesus would have dealt with people.
Yeah.
So my tendency to say is in fallen human nature, sure, you'd have some, but I'm not sure it would have been the majority.
Right,
Because
'cause
I'm not sure I've always been,
Yeah.
I'm not, I want to be.
But if we
That's
saw God's plan unfold the way that he wanted, would he have been like, hey, religious leaders, Pharisees, Sadducees, you missed out on this joy, like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
It's for God's glory, but our joy, when God is glorified, we're satisfied,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's almost like God going, my plan's unfolding,
Yeah.
but you guys missed out on all this joy. Like your heart was filled with hatred instead of this joy that you could have experienced.
That's good.
And they would be like, it's because we had to keep all these rules all this time, and you had us do this, but they're just coming in.
Just jumping into water and they're good to go.
I guess it's all equal now.
We've been washing our hands for 1,500 years.
My hands are raw. Look at their beautiful skin. Speaking of, all right, the answer to our discipleship question today, the discipleship question is, what's holding me back from looking more like Jesus? Pastor Scott says the answer is, it's staring right back at you in the mirror. It's you. So on that note,
that's what I tell myself every time
storyteller, isn't he?
I'm working out, lifting weights.
You're the problem.
You're the problem.
This is all on you.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to end,
Great,
guys.
think about that all
Thanks for listening.
Good
You can go to
times.
whoisgrace.com/Mark for resources. You can also submit a question, but we know you won't.
Nobody submitted a question?
No. Tell your friends.
Guys,
guys.
you're missing out
Please
on
submit
the
the
beauty
question.
of the joy of what could happen when you
Every
submit a
time
question.
I think we're not going to air one of these, we air it anyway.
We air
Thanks for hanging in there.
Even the
We'll see you
Halloween
next
episode.
week. Halloween episode, yeah.
there
We'll be
you
like
go.
the Simpsons who do like Halloween.
Okay, now we really
Episode.
can't hear it.
Oh, well,
We mentioned
you can cut it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.